Yep. Initially, I went to the protest, obviously, woke up at 11. Went there as part of a big group of students, and everyone was very passionate, very passionate towards the education cuts. I mean, very devastated, obviously. By the time we got there, we were there waiting for the vote. After the vote, I was the first one with my brother and my girlfriend to try and leave. And the line of police obviously moved in and tried to kettle us. Because I was the first one there, I was in the front, and I witnessed most of the action. Initially, I was punched in the face for no reason whatsoever, as we were being crushed into a tiny little group of people against the police van. We had horses moving in on us. I was pushed from behind by protesters into a police officer who grabbed me by the shoulders, pretty much looked into my eyes and then kneed me in the balls. After that, I was spun around, crushed amongst shields, hit in the ear, so I moved and turned around so I wouldn't be hit in the face any further. I was smacked in the head with a shield and then hit on the right shoulder and the pressure point with a baton, so I couldn't feel my arm for 2 hours. I just want to reiterate that we were there trying to leave, and the police, after the police tried to keep us in this small space, that was when students started to get restless and quite upset. At the end of the day, we were in a kettle on Westminster Bridge for 2 hours, having waited in Parliament Square for 2 hours prior to that. There were shouts of wanting our human rights, shouts of a fascist state. People were packed like sardines onto this bridge, and it was probably one of the most appalling situations I've ever witnessed in my life. Before yesterday, I thought I could have some sympathy with the police. I didn't understand that police could do this unprovoked. As of yesterday, I have a completely different opinion.
It's quite a vivid account there of quite a serious assault on the right of people to democratically and legitimately protest. And I think.
No, wait a minute. He used the phrase "appalling scenes."
We haven't finished with the.
Thank you very much. We'll have questions in a minute.
We want to know your opinion of the behaviour of those who are throwing themselves at members of the public.
We'll answer your questions in a minute. I'm going to introduce Mark Bergfeld now. He's a colleague of mine on the NUS NEC, and he's from the Education Activist Network, and he'll give his take on yesterday as well.
Apologies for my lateness. I just was in a radio interview before I came. I think what we need to say is that we don't, as a students' movement, we don't recognize the vote that has taken place yesterday. The police brutality shown yesterday, the police violence, is a sign of the political impotence of the coalition government, a government which has been not given the mandate to cut, has been not given the mandate to increase tuition fees by 300%, and we need to go back to the politics of it. We need to go back to the fact that the Tories did not receive a majority, the Lib Dems stood on a platform of free education for all, and that's why we don't recognize the vote. The vote is illegitimate, and our movement has been growing, and the coalition government has been weakening, and we continue to grow. In terms of the state, there are a few things to say. There's first of all to say that we as a democratic movement, that we as a movement from below, a movement that represents students, workers, unemployed, all those people under attack, has the right to protest at Parliament Square, has the right to protest at Parliament Square on the day of the elections, because it isn't the police who is defending democracy, it is us, the ordinary people, the people who didn't vote for this government, the people that feel betrayed by the democratic processes, that essentially has the right to protest at Parliament Square, to voice our opinions loud and clear. The police did not guarantee that it would not kettle us, it did not guarantee that it would not charge us with horses, it did not guarantee that it would not baton student protesters. It became very clear on the evening before the demonstration that the police was surveying the occupations of the students that were taking place. All of those police officers who were surveying Bloomsbury were equipped with batons. On the day itself, it became very clear that the police had estimated 30,000 protesters correctly, but as well as in order to guarantee police presence at each and every turning point of the demonstration itself, We believe that the police presence on the day is comparable to the police presence conducted in repressive regimes, and last time seen in Britain since in the Great Miners' Strike of 84-85. We do not believe that it is legitimate to kettle protesters for several hours in freezing temperatures without toilet facilities, without food, within freezing temperatures, and we believe that this shows again and again how weak the government in reality is, and by what methods the state and the police will employ in order to defend the interest of a tiny minority of Tory scumbag millionaires who runs this country and who's wrecking the future, the dreams and aspirations of entire generations to come. They're excluding the working class from higher education. They're decimating our education. They're decimating further education. And what they are out to get is that this tiny minority who controls the wealth of the country can live its life whilst millions of people continue to suffer, become homeless through the housing bill that they're seeking to pass, to become unemployed through the cuts in public sector that they're going to be trying to pass, to continue to live in the poorest and appalling conditions that we have seen since Engels described the conditions of the English working class in the 19th century. And so I believe that we must go back to the point of the vote is illegitimate. We do not recognize the vote, and we will continue to protest. We will continue to take the movement forward. On Monday, there's a day of action by 9 trade unions, which is in order to save EMA. This is another battleground for our movement, and we will be protesting outside the Department of Business Skills and Innovation at 4 p.m. on that day.
I would ask the British public to look at the realities of 14-year-olds being horse-charged. 14-year-olds who are there for a peaceful day on their first protest, whose futures are being put in jeopardy. And it's clear that there's a sensationalist media agenda. They've ignored thousands of legitimate protesters, and they've ignored the savage impact of the cuts on human beings over a few panes of glass. I'll take some questions now.
Tom Parmenter from Sky News. We've heard your monologues, very profound in places, but you've made no attempt to address the appalling violence that was meted out by student protesters yesterday. Claire Solomon, can I ask you, how many people do you think crossed the line yesterday?
You want a number?
An estimate?
Well, I think there was a large number of the police that crossed the line yesterday.
And you don't acknowledge any of the student behaviour that went beyond a reasonable protest?
You cannot see the actions of angry young students in isolation from the conditions that create them. These are students, as one person said on Newsnight last night, that come from the slums of London, who are constantly attacked by society, constantly vilified. ASBOs, stop and searches, don't wear hoodies, don't play loud music, and now they're having the only chance that they have for the future stripped away from them. They want to go to university like a lot of other people, and now they are seeing their futures, one being faced with unemployment and worse.